Good afternoon and good morning to those of you out west. Welcome to today's democast from Construction Canada and North American Steel. My name is Carly. I'm the managing editor for Construction Canada, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions during today's democast, please enter them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Zoom does have a raise hand function, but we'll be keeping everyone's mics muted, so please use the Q&A instead. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please enter a message in the chat right next to the Q&A, and we'll do our best to help. Today's democast is being recorded and will be available on Construction Canada's website by this time next week. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Jonathan HIRST, Michael MENARD, and SHAUN SCHWARTZ. Jonathan HIRST has worked as a prominent figure at NAS and the industrial storage industry as a whole for over a decade. He is currently the Vice President and General Manager of North American Storage, as well as the Vice President of High Cube Storage Products in Western Canada. Michael MENARD has represented North American Steel as a direct sales representative for nearly 5 years and is now trusted by some of the most prominent companies in their respective industries in Ontario and across Canada. SHAUN SCHWARTZ is the Director of Marketing and Sales Strategy for North American Steel and is responsible for the strategic development and execution of all marketing activities at NAS. In today's democast, the team from the North American Steel group of companies will discuss the importance and benefit of working with and purchasing from a domestic pallet racking manufacturer versus an imported racking supplier. The team will discuss a wide range of issues, including the original steel and quality assurance, accessibility of racking hardware, replacement parts and service, certifications, and ongoing maintenance and worker safety. Gentlemen, we appreciate you joining us today. Please take it away.
Thank you, Carly. I appreciate the beautiful introduction. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Carly mentioned, my name is SHAUN SCHWARTZ. I'm the Director of Marketing and Sales Strategy at North American Steel. So throughout this presentation, we are going to introduce you to North American Steel. For any of you who are unfamiliar with our company, we'll give you a bit of a background and history of who we are and what we do. Part one, we will be discussing origins of steel and quality assurance in relation to domestic racking versus imported racking. Part two, we will be discussing the accessibility of racking components, hardware, replacement parts, services, things of that nature. And finally, we will be discussing certification, ongoing maintenance, and the human cost in relation to your racking and why domestic racking is so important in all of these respects. So first off, who is North American Steel? So for any of you in attendance who are not familiar with our company, North American Steel and our sister company, North American Storage in the west coast of Canada, we are a leading Canadian manufacturer and end-to-end service provider of pallet racking and industrial shelving systems. Our head office is located in Whitby, Ontario, which is just outside of Toronto. Officially, the company was incorporated in 1952 as a subsidiary of the Steel Equipment Company of England, which was originally established all the way back in 1898. However, the company was acquired by the current owners, the Fabricas family, in 1972, which makes this year, 2022, the 50th anniversary officially of North American Steel under current ownership. We have over 400,000 square feet of manufacturing and warehouse space in 6 full-scale plants and distribution centers across Canada, including in Colborne, Ontario, which is where our largest plant is situated, as well as in Whitby, Ontario, Calgary and Edmonton, or Nisku, Alberta, as well as locations in both Mississauga, Ontario, and Vancouver, British Columbia. And on the right-hand side of the screen here, you can see a bit of a timeline of how the company has grown and expanded over the past 50 years. So in terms of what North American Steel does, what we offer, it's a very wide range of both products and services. From a service standpoint, I did mention that we are end-to-end. So we handle everything in-house from racking, design, and engineering. We have in-house project managers. We offer installation, material handling, various product solutions, safety inspections, and of course, the big one, manufacturing. We're a manufacturer at the end of the day. In terms of industries that we service, the list is very long, and we have a more comprehensive list on our website at www.naseco.ca. But just to give you a few examples, we work with many distribution centers, 3PLs, cold storage facilities, outdoor storage, retail logistics and retail warehousing, general warehousing, manufacturing, the list goes on and on. And in terms of systems that we offer a very wide range of racking and shelving systems, from your standard selective and double deep racking, narrow aisle, very narrow aisle, cantilever, and into dynamic systems like pushback, drive-in, drive-through, pallet flow and carton flow, a number of industrial shelving lines as well, a very popular line being the Widespan 4000 series. We also specialize in designing and installing larger storage platforms, so more complex systems like pick towers, rack-supported buildings, shelf-supported platforms, mezzanines, catwalks, the whole 9 yards. So we really are an A to Z manufacturer and service provider when it comes to pallet racking and industrial storage as a whole. So to give you an idea of who we work with, I mean, being in this industry for over 50 years, we've had the honor now of working with some of the most prominent names you can think of in each of their respective fields. In the automotive industry, BMW, Toyota, Mercedes. We recently completed a very large project for Kubota in their new facility in Pickering, Hershey's Chocolate, Walmart, Home Depot. You're going to see all of our racking. So this is a small full of examples of who we work with in our client base, just to illustrate that our racking is used everywhere. Every industry, any storage solution, any storage situation you can think of, North American Steel is there. Now I'm going to pass the presentation on to Jonathan Hurst, who will be discussing the importance of the origins of steel and quality assurance when it comes to your racking systems. Jonathan,
thank you, Sean. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you again for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to be covering a couple sections today. First one being origins of steel and quality assurance. Sean, I'm going to ask you to advance the slide. So one of the things that we really push at North American Steel is the transparency of our process. And when we speak of full transparency with respect to our domestic manufacturing, we're referring to knowing the source of the steel, the qualifications and controlling the quality of the manufacturing, and understanding the processes and the impacts to our environment that these processes may have. The global market presents clients with a diverse range of internationally manufactured steel racking. Just the international pipeline that and the world trade has driven standardization of certain pallet sizes and weights. And so there's lots of global solutions for pallet racking available around the world. And with real estate prices increasing dramatically over the past decade, we're seeing a trend of racking structures exceeding heights we've never seen before. 30 years ago, a 25-foot tall racking system was a tall system. Now it's not uncommon that they're exceeding 35, 40 feet, and in some very specialized applications, over 100 feet tall. It makes it that much more important to know exactly what it is you're getting as far as where the steel's coming from, the quality of which it's manufactured, and what standards are being maintained during that manufacturing. So evaluating the quality of a manufactured product is not always perceivable based on appearance. While it may look the same, anybody that's ever heard of a Pinterest fail or followed a recipe that looks great on Instagram, but in reality it tastes like paste, will appreciate this concept of appearance, form versus function. With pallet racking being built on the scale which we're seeing for new warehouses, the global supply chain delays that we're waiting longer for material, We're searching harder for good suppliers of quality steel. And likely at the end of the day, we're paying more for that product. It just increases the importance of understanding the process by which that material is being supplied to you, the operator or the end user. There are some really simple and independent checks that any purchaser or procurement officer of pallet racking can do, and questions that you should be asking before you make a commitment on selecting a vendor. First of all, are they listed as a qualified welding facility? This is actually part of the building code in Canada, that they must be listed as a certified welding facility and achieve a certain level, which is specified in the code. Do they have a complete set of safe practices and procedures for manufacturing that product, for maintaining the product, for installing and repairing the product? Are those resources available to you for engineering and design? And can you see some examples up front? In a lot of cases, when we have long pipelines, if you wait too long to ask, some vendors just cannot provide it. So because it's not something that is typically required by permit checkers or areas of jurisdiction. So purchasing domestic greatly impacts the ongoing flexibility of your system as well. Our racking, just like your business, is considered to grow over time, to change needs, to be presented with challenges, with ongoing market changes, and your system needs to be flexible to accommodate that. So our racking comes with what's called a PSR, or Pre-Start Health and Safety Capacity Rating. And then as our local affiliates across Canada can work with your specific location, we can update those over time to make sure that the racking system that you bought changes and grows with your business. Our engineers are here to support any changes that you need to be made, and we can even modify systems, move systems, or reconfigure those systems to grow with your business. Next page. So steel is not steel. Unfortunately, steel can come in all sorts of compositions and mixes and grades and strengths, and it's really it's impossible to tell by just looking at the steel how strong it is. And so there's lots of tests that we do internally and that our suppliers do to demonstrate that what we are buying is in fact what we're assuming we're using in our calculations to provide you with safe working capacities. Domestic steel mills abide by recommended steel compositions as outlined by the CASIC in Canada, and similarly the AISC in the US. And this same standard is recommended for steel mills across the world, and adherence to these standards is voluntary, and the further away you get from these domestic steel centers, not necessarily harder to check, but certainly harder to do something about it after it's arrived. Mill certificates is kind of a little passport that we ask for and we receive with our loads of steel, and it breaks down all the components and the different ingredients, if you will, that make up that steel mix. We have to ask for it up front, and we ask for it consistently, and for large projects we keep it on file. If you're buying your steel from somewhere else and it's being put in a container and shipped over on a ship, that is a finished product, and getting that same steel certification once that product is manufactured and delivered is impossible. So even though it may not seem like a big deal, small differences in the steel composition can have dramatic effects on how that steel responds, not only during the welding and the forming process, but those small impurities or inclusions in steel can result in brittleness. It can lead to premature cracking or failure upon impact. This picture here is a great example of picking the right steel for the application. It was chosen for its weldability, but it's also ductile enough or pliable enough that if it gets hit, and this one really got hit, it doesn't bring down the entire warehouse like so many YouTube videos would have us believe. A properly designed system that's loaded to its correct capacity, using the correct steel built by qualified manufacturing facilities, can take some pretty significant hits and still remain standing, and allow you the most important thing that you need at a time of an incident, and that is time. Time for your associates to respond, to evaluate, to evacuate. All pallet racking in Canada has to be welded by a facility complying to CSA W47.1. That is a code that's set in place by the Canadian Welding Bureau. Every pallet racking manufacturer that's qualified to manufacture rack in Canada is certified by the Canadian Welding Bureau. And it's really easy to check. You just go to their website and you can look up all the manufacturers, all the companies, in fact, globally, that meet this welding standard. Finally, the other important consideration when you're comparing domestic steel versus imported steel or imported rack is the effect on the environment. Canada is a global leader and continues to strive to be to set a global standard for emissions and recycling and safe work environments. Now, you may not know, but the majority of domestic steel that is utilized in cars and bridges and buildings and all of these basic components, if they're finished their service life, they actually come back to the mill and are melted down and recycled. Not only are they recycled to continue to be used and avoid landfills, but it's also done in a manner which is in fact reduced emissions versus other steel mills that might be coal driven or otherwise. So according to the Canadian Steel Producers Association, production of steel in Canada for use in Canada results in over a 33% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to steel that's produced overseas and then shipped globally via sea or rail to be used in Canada. I'm going to hand it over now. Next slide. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. I appreciate the information you just gave everybody. Let's continue this on to part two. We are going to be discussing the accessibility of racking hardware, replacement parts, and service. I'm going to pass this along to Michael MENARD now.
Sean, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael MENARD, and I'm a direct sales representative with North American Steel. I've been with the company for over 5 years now, and I've been to hundreds of warehouses across Ontario and Canada here. So I'm hoping I can share some insight with you in terms of the hardware used to put together the racking and some damage information as well. So our racking and racking in general is made to hold a lot of weight. You know, most times people are putting 5,000-pound pallets on there and stacking multiple levels high, as you can see in that photo to the right of the slide there. So with that said, I mean, having the right hardware is critical to keeping the system together and keeping it anchored to the floor and to keep everything just sturdy and standing and usable. North American Steel uses SAE grade 5 hardware to ensure the bolted connections can be assembled to the correct torque on the first installation. So when we put this stuff together, oftentimes we send in an installation crew that will assemble the racking. And after that, a lot of warehouses I've been to do not have a maintenance program in-house. So it's really important to make sure that everything's tightened correctly the first time and doesn't come loose after that, because the racking's definitely going to move when it's being loaded and offloaded by pallet trucks. So again, everything must be tightened to the correct torque. And then we have a serrated nut. So it looks like this. It has little serrates on it there that will kind of dig into the racking steel a little bit and tighten up, and it'll lock there. So it's not going to come loose from loading and unloading the racking. So where are we? Sorry, guys. So typical hardware will be used. We use the wedge anchors to secure the racking to the concrete slab, nuts and bolts to hold the row spacers together, or the beams and row spacers if you're using structural racking, and safety pins to keep the beams engaged. So this is the wedge anchor that connects the foot plate of the racking to the concrete slab. And so what happens is you drill a hole with a hammer drill and put that in, put the wedge anchor in and tighten up that nut, and the nut just it pulls that screw up and this part expands there. So it's getting wedged into the concrete again, just to keep everything tight and in place there for when you're loading and offloading the racking. So North American Steel and our dealer network, we always have this hardware in stock. Typically we can ship it out within the same week. If you're to call us and say, hey, you know, I need some anchors or pins or row spacer hardware, it's always in stock, and it takes about a week to get out to you there. And as far as components goes, if you're looking at frames and beams and safety bars, we do keep certain items in stock that are popular. So if you damage a frame or a beam, we typically have a quick replacement or can make it fairly quickly as well. So when working with imported racking, wait times can be 3 months or longer just with the shipping right now and manufacturing. So minimal lead times for imported racking right now, I'd say we're at about 3 to 4 months minimum. And this leads to longer downtimes, right? So, you damage your frame, you have to offload the racking, you have 20 skids on your floor, and it's taking up space and it's reducing efficiency and leading to more downtime and just makes a whole mess of it. So right now in Canada, the support and services here for pallet racking. Next slide. So consider racking system type and complexity. So warehouse storage systems are becoming larger and more complex. North American Steel offers design and engineering services on multiple styles of systems, including selective racking, double deep, drive-in, pick towers, pushback, pallet flow, and many more. We aim to work with the customer to provide the best storage system based on their individual needs. So, you might have some pallets on your floor, you might have a lot of pallets and you don't know what to do with them. We will send someone in or come in and assess and talk to you and see kind of what stuff you're storing and ultimately try to get the best solution in there for you. Not just shelving or selective pallet racking. There's so much more that can be done. So say, for example, if you have a lot of hand picked parts, like if you're a hardware distributor and you have nuts and bolts and all types of different SKUs, there's a photo here on the right that shows a pick tower. So what this does is takes up way less space in your warehouse because we're building up, we're using that height of the warehouse. So it's a much smaller footprint, but you can hold many SKUs in this rather than spreading out just hand-picked shelving along the whole warehouse floor. So that's definitely a system we've been providing more and more with warehouse real estate going up and space becoming limited. A pick tower is a great application to get tons of SKUs in there and not take up too big of a footprint in your warehouse. So oftentimes imported racking is limited to selective pallet racking and shelving from what I've seen so far. I haven't seen any integrated systems like this. Maybe someone's working on them somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. There are only a few major players in Canada in terms of manufacturing and installation. So our installers know our racking and they know our competitors' racking because there's many similarities in putting it together. And it's what the installation crews are used to. So when working with foreign manufacturers, there's always a risk of an installation going south. The drawing might not make sense, it's slowing down the timeline, or components arrive damaged, and then you're waiting 3 or 4 months for new components. And if it happens, it'll take longer to get replacement parts and make for a costly and time-consuming installation process. As Jonathan mentioned as well, it's very important to make sure that everything's OBC compliant or building code compliant wherever you're located to pass the permit and to get your permits and pass the inspection ultimately. Thanks, guys. That's it for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael, for that. We are now going to pass this back to Mr. Jonathan Hurst, who will be discussing the issues of certification, ongoing maintenance, and of course the human cost when it comes to your racking.
Thanks very much, Sean. So the Canadian health and safety policies provincially all universally allocate the responsibility of maintaining the racking system in a safe and certified condition back onto the facility's owners or operators or tenants, if you will. As part of any health and safety program in an organization, a rack maintenance plan is integral to demonstrating that not only to your associates, but to any third-party groups who may be visiting your site as part of ongoing safety inspections, that you are conducting your business in a traceable, documented, and safe manner. A rack maintenance program is comprised mainly of two parts. Simply put, there's an inspection and there's a response. And while I'll not get into the inspection side during this presentation, I will touch a little bit on the response. If your inspection identifies damaged material, how you respond to that damage is not set out by a code or a set of enforceable rules. As an operator, your rack maintenance program, which you lay out, must identify that course of action. It must identify the timing or the priority response, and most importantly, it has to document it. So as a domestic racking manufacturer with representatives across Canada, NAS is well suited to providing feedback on your program and to help you ensure that it meets the requirements of your province. So damage equals downtime, simply put. Anybody can come in and try and rate damage or qualify damage, but when we certify your pallet racking, it's presumed to be in new or like new condition. And so if there's a dent somewhere on it, or it's deflected or deformed, well, now it's not as it was when it was originally evaluated. So that needs to be addressed. It could no longer be trusted. So the priority which you apply to that will be set by your operations staff and your health and safety program. But any way you look at it, the downtime from damage results in locked out storage locations. It could reduce your picking spots. It could limit or change the workflow unexpectedly in your operation, which results in lost productivity and ultimately lost revenue. We can assist you in evaluating if you have areas of repeat occurrences or intersections or locations where there's high incidence of reported damage, and apply customized solutions to ensure that your operation remains up to code and in fact functional for all the shifts that you're working during the week and for all the associates you may have working in that facility. We understand that businesses change, and so pallet storage system requirements and applications need to be flexible. When you work with a domestic partner, we are manufacturing to your needs. We are not simply providing you a catalog solution, which translates to what they have available locally at this time, or tying your maintenance or your operations downtime and repair schedule to long lead international material pipelines, of which we're all working through. Next page, please. So when I talk about lost revenues and cost to businesses, the biggest cost that we face as operators in this market is really the human cost. While it's pretty commonplace now, as recently as the 1990s, pallet racking was just considered warehouse furniture. There was no permitting, there was no inspections, there was no code, and really there was no expectations. And so it was left to owners and operators to deal with damage as they see fit. They'd weld their own, weld on little fix-it kits or bolt things on, or quite simply just pile stuff in front of the damage. Over the last 30 years, pallet racking has migrated out of the back of warehouses and into our daily lives. So it's not uncommon now to go out shopping with your family and find yourself walking amongst pallet racking. You see it in shopping clubs, you see it in DIY hardware providers. You see it in big box stores. You even see it in regular as regular retailing in department stores that might be selling bulky items or items by the pallet. So once the pallet racking came out of the warehouses into the retail environment, well, we then at that point decided we needed a set of rules to keep the public safe. When it was in the back of a warehouse, everybody was assumed to be sort of industrially aware, and it was assumed that everybody knew how to safely work around pallet racking. But once it came into the retail environment, and now families were walking around it, we had to implement a bunch of safety codes and guidelines. And as a sidebar, it actually really improved the fit and finish and paint quality and weld quality and appearance and interchangeability of all of these products, because now we've been thrust from the back all the way to the front of the line, and we had the world's attention. In fact, all these codes came in place to protect the public in these public areas, and was only after that, and I mean a decade or more after that, that they started applying that code to the associates working in warehouses. So it was a net positive effect. And as a country, Canada is still working through iterations of this design code, which we can agree keeps our associates safe, or in the case of a retailer, keeps our customers safe. We still don't have actually a standalone racking code. We have pieces of codes, and to really wade your way through it, it does take a little bit of dedication, and it takes some understanding. Those codes have come about through the contribution of North American pallet racking manufacturers collaborating, testing, rewriting code, retesting, in order to come to an agreed upon set of rules by which we'll design racking and by which we'll set up warehouses and provide guidelines for their safe use. There are no manufacturers participating in the Canadian pallet racking code that are based outside of North America. Full stop. And when we attended a recent international trade show, and there were many pallet racking manufacturers from around the world showing their wares and demonstrating their new products, and all for import into the North American domestic market. I took some time to ask some of them about things that I know are required as part of the Canadian pallet racking design code adherence, things like welding certifications and material certifications and things like that. And the response I got back more than once was the costs are too high and no one asks. And that's really on us as a manufacturing community, that we're not pushing the government to really follow up on some of the things that we say should be in place. But the reality is right now, it's a little bit of a wild west as far as importing steel rack. There's no current tariffs on it, as other countries have implemented to try and stem the flow. There's no inspections upon landing. And in fact, there's no requirement for inspection once it's here, once that rack is installed. In some jurisdictions, we still don't have permitting. So that liability of maintaining a safe work environment, unless you buy in and tie in with a long-term partner, that's really going to be on you. And there's a lot to take in. Our goal at NAS is to ensure that everybody goes home at the end of the day. That should be all of our goals. It's the best way to ensure all of our long-term partnerships remain fruitful and our clients continue to be successful. We've been doing this for over 50 years in the Canadian market, and we prioritize doing it right the first time. We prioritize keeping abreast of changing rules and expectations by province. Because when you've been around as long as we have and work with the successful clients that we work with, there's many opportunities to improve and get it right, and lots of opportunities to build that relationship. So we're always working together with what's coming next, and in essence, keep you prepared and keep your people safe. that's the conclusion of my portion of the presentation. I want to thank my fellow presenter, Michael, for joining me today, and to Sean for moderating it. I'll hand it back to the moderators at this point for any questions people may have.
Perfect. Thank you all for this excellent presentation. We do have time for a question from the audience. Please post any questions you have in the Q&A window on your screen. It looks like we have one coming in already. To what extent is cold rolled steel used?
I can respond to that. Cold roll steel forms a family of pallet racking and shelving that we use called roll formed. And in non-seismic areas, in selective applications, and in applications that are generally 35 feet or under, cold rolled steel, the roll formed applications, are very popular. They probably are 80 to 85% of the market. As the structures get higher, as the environments become more abusive, or say if you've got a 24-hour operation with multiple shifts and a high, maybe a high turnover of associates that may be loaded and accessing it, we start to see a shift in the more hot rolled or the structural based pallet racking. And, especially when you get into controlled environments where you're dealing with freezers or coolers in operating temperatures where it's like minus 21 Celsius, those are highly abusive environments. And so you're going to see a much higher level of structural or hot rolled steel applications there. Additionally, as we're getting higher and higher, when you start seeing these pallet racking installations becoming 35, 40, 50 feet tall and higher, those really fall back into the hot rolled and structural applications. So that's kind of a balance between. It really does depend. Again, we look at considerations like seismicity of the area. If it's lower mainland BC or maybe along the St. Lawrence Seaway where we have high levels of seismicity, we could lean more to, say, a hot rolled application. If we have maybe a high level storage facility in the prairies, it may end up being roll formed, even though it goes quite tall. North American storage, North American steel facilities actually have the ability to mix these two, because the roll formed steel can be cheaper on a price per pound, whereas the hot rolled can be more durable as far as years of service. So if you're talking with your provider, don't forget to ask about hybrid versions where you can actually mix and match. Put the steel where you need it for protection and durability, and then put the thinner gauge strong sections in areas that have reduced contact or lower risk of incidental damage. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That's all the time that we do have for questions this afternoon. If you do need to reach out with any additional questions, the presenter's contact information is up on the screen. Thank you, Jonathan, Michael, and Sean, and thanks to everyone who joined us today.